Today's episode is a special edition of Cowboy Crossroads in honor of Veterans Day. I'd like to dedicate this episode to all veterans of the United States Armed Forces and in special memory of my grandfather, Arthur Hedges, who served in the Marine Corps during World War II, and my wife's grandfather, Zane Sweet, who served in the Navy during World War II. I'd like to start today's show with a poem written by Rod McQuarrie. Rod McQuarrie was a cowboy poet who was very active in the early days of the National Cowboy Poetry Gathering in Elko, Nevada. In 1993, he wrote a book of his poetry about his experiences in the Vietnam War, along with fellow cowboy poet and veteran Bill Jones. The book was published by John Doffelmeyer's Dry Creek Press, and it was entitled Blood Trails. The last poem in that book is Rod McQuarrie's For Life. If life were just one April day, and I should wake mid-afternoon to feel the sunshine on my shirt, warm, scattered raindrops wet my cheek, I'd marvel with my newborn eyes at the beauty I had never seen. If life should be one April day, I'll not pine for a morning lost, nor mourn some teenage innocence. But hand in hand, my love and I will lift one cup for fallen friends. Then, our business done, we'll laugh till wrinkles frame our eyes. And in those final precious hours, we'll celebrate the evening time. Howdy folks, this is Andy Hedges, and you're listening to Cowboy Crossroads. On each episode, I interview a different guest and ask them to share stories and discuss music, poetry, and culture from the working cowboy West and beyond. My guest today is Joel Nelson. Joel is well respected for his work as a cowboy and a poet, and just this year he received the Working Cowboy Award from the Ranching Heritage Association. Joel appeared on Cowboy Crossroads back on episodes 37 and 38, where I interviewed him about his cowboying experiences and his perspective on poetry. If you haven't already, I'd recommend going back and listening to those episodes. On today's episode, I asked Joel to share about his experiences in the Vietnam War. Joel served with the United States Army in Vietnam from July of 1969 to September of 1970. He says he had 2 birthdays while he was there. He was awarded multiple air medals and 1 Bronze Star. In talking about his Vietnam experience, Joel told me that it's something I wouldn't want to do again, but I wouldn't take any amount of money for the experience. I wouldn't want to relive it, but I'm honored that I got to live it. Here's Joel Nelson.
Well, when I was still in high school and starting college, I was watching a lot on the news about the beginning of the conflict as we know it. We had Special Forces advisors who were over there working with the South Vietnamese troops, and there were some scenes of conflicts and battles and so forth that would show up on the news, and an occasional casualty. So I graduated from high school in 1964 and went right on to college at Stephen F. Austin State University in Nacogdoches, Texas. And we would go to the community center or the student center there at the college, and there was a TV room there, and we'd watch more news about the conflict going on in Vietnam. And by 1968, things had pretty well escalated into a full-fledged war going on. And by that time, I pretty much knew that was going to be my destiny, would probably be to serve and get involved in that conflict. Other classmates of mine were either trying to get into graduate school, stay in school, something that would maybe keep them from getting drafted. That thought never did really occur to me. I just assumed that I was going to be drafted, and I had no desire to go to graduate school. I'd had enough of school by 1968 and was kind of burned out on going to school. And I was pursuing a degree in forestry and range management at the time, and by the time I finally graduated in 1968, I had lost my interest in working in timber. I had done quite a bit of that during my college career. I had marked and cruised timber in East Texas and northern Idaho, but I'd gotten more enthused about punching cows. And so when I got out of school, spring of 1968, all I wanted to do was go get horseback and have some kind of a riding job up until the time came when I would be going into the Army. And there was a deferment called a 2S deferment, which I had when I was going to college. Had I remained in college, I could have maintained my 2S deferment, like if I'd gone on to graduate school. But once I got out of college, my status changed to 1A, which was you're next in line, basically. So I was classified 1A after graduation, and I thought, well, it's only a matter of time now till I'll be drafted. I didn't really want to enlist. I could probably have gotten a much better job assignment, I guess you might say. Might even have been able to avoid Vietnam entirely and go to Germany or Korea or who knows where, had I enlisted. But I thought, I don't want to spend any more time than I need to in the Army, so I'll just let them draft me, put in my time, and see where it takes things. So I went to work on a ranch out of Albany, Texas when I got out of school, and worked there until their part-time help was no longer needed. And then I came back down here to Alpine and went to work, another riding job. And I did that through the end of 1968. I got my draft notice in January 1969 and reported to my draft station. I registered for the draft in Benjamin, Texas when I was 18, and that's where I had to report, my courthouse at Benjamin, Texas, and that's where I was put on a bus and taken to Abilene for physical and sworn in. And they put us up for the night in Abilene, Texas, and then flew us to El Paso, which is where I started basic training. And I spent my time in basic training, was sent straight to Fort Ord, California for advanced training. And then from Fort Ord, California, I was sent right on to Vietnam, Cam Ranh Bay. And when I reached Cam Ranh Bay, I was standing in line processing into the country, and ran into an old drill sergeant that I'd had in basic training. He was one of those hardcore, in-your-face, makes you feel pretty small kind of drill sergeants. They're known for giving new recruits a pretty hard time. But when I ran into him in Vietnam, he was there for his third or fourth cure. And he recognized me, and we talked a while, and he was the softest, kindest guy in the world. Said, you're in the real deal now. Just take care of yourself. Be careful and good luck. And just a total 180 from the guy I had in my face in basic training. Also ran into a guy I'd gone to college with right there. First couple of days in Vietnam. Well, basic training was approximately 2 months. I'm not 100% sure exactly how many weeks it was, but approximately 2 months. That was pretty hard physical work. They put us through a lot of physical training, forced marches, did a lot of getting acquainted with our rifles and various pieces of fighting gear, did a lot of hand-to-hand training. Basic training is degrading. When you first report for basic training, they begin immediately trying to tear you down to nothing. Everybody gets their hair buzzed off, and you're through wearing civilian clothes. They give you Army fatigues, and I think they do this intentionally. I think they give you a set of clothes that are 2 sizes too big for you, so you know you look awful all the time. I think it's an attempt to demoralize you and tear you down to absolute zero so they can start building you into what they want you to be. That's my interpretation of what it's all about. But it's tough. They get you up early in the morning and you got to hit the floor running, and you don't get to sleep until late at night because you got to keep your uniform right. You got to keep your brass polished. You got to keep the barracks clean and the floors polished and the bathroom spotless and all of the faucets gleaming, and it's just constant. You don't get much sleep at all. It is really hard. At Fort Bliss, we did a lot of marching and bivouacking and out in the white sands. That's where we had our rifle range, and we'd bus out there, and it was everything was just grueling. Basic training was tough, and then went on to Fort Ord, California, to advanced individual training. That's where we got acquainted with the M16 rifles. We'd used M14 rifles in our basic training in El Paso. We got introduced to the M16 and M60 machine guns and weapons that we hadn't encountered in basic training. And it was, in a way, a lot more, I'll say, sophisticated. We did more map reading. We did a lot of exercises that were just a little bit higher level than what we got in basic training. Did a lot of night maneuvers, night courses, a lot of forced marches with packs and full equipment, and it was grueling also. I was in basic and advanced training with a guy from my hometown who I'd known real well. We were buddies at home, and we went in together. Ran into another buddy of ours at Fort Ord, California, and we got to hang out together, and we're in the same barracks, and we were real tight, and we teamed up and tried to help some of the guys that were having a little bit more trouble. There was another guy whose name was also Nelson, who was about my size, but he was a pretty soft kind of guy. How he got through basic training, I don't know, but he was having a hard time making some of those marches, and my high school buddy Ricky Ray and I would get on either side of him, and in addition to carrying our own gear, we carried his and got a hand under each arm and carried him along between us and got him through it. So it was an ordeal, but we learned a lot in advanced training, and we started to develop a little bit of pride in who we were by that time. Kind of got into some clothes that actually fit us, and we're trying to look sharp. We got a weekend pass occasionally, so it was an entirely upscale experience from what we'd been through in basic. We got our orders. Ricky went to Korea, and I went to Vietnam, and we wrote one another during that period when he was in Korea. It was all tough, all physically tough and all mentally tough, basic and AIT both. And by the time you get out of AIT, you're from nothing up to a person that you're kind of halfway proud of, have a little self-respect by that time. You've endured a lot, and you've gotten through a lot, and you think you're going to make it by that time. When I got to Vietnam, I only spent a couple of days there. The 101st Airborne Division had just suffered some really, really heavy casualties, a place called Hamburger Hill, and they were short of men. And I got stuck right into the 101st Airborne Division, although I had never been to jump school, and so I'm not jump qualified. They were just after warm bodies. And I was flown from Cameron Bay to Camp Evans, which is up in northern I Corps, not too far from the provincial capital of Hue. And Camp Evans was my base camp the entire time I was in Vietnam. But they put us through a pretty intensive rappelling course because there were not any combat jumps made in Vietnam, no parachute jumps. We did some rappelling, though, when we were going into triple canopy jungle that didn't have a landing zone. We had to rappel down through the canopy, and that's the training I got rather than parachute training, and was assigned to a line company, an infantry company. That was my MOS. I was infantry, 11B40. I guess I would have been called a rifleman, infantryman with the 101st Airborne Division. The 101st at that time operated in what's known as Northern I Corps. Vietnam was divided up into various corps: 1 Corps, I Corps, 2 Corps, 3 Corps, 4 Corps. I Corps was the northernmost geographical area of operation, right below the demilitarized zone, and ran across from the South China Sea to the Laotian border. And that's where some of the heaviest fighting occurred. And although there was heavy fighting in every corps area, so that kind of gets me from school to Vietnam.
I'm kind of curious, I guess, what that must have felt like to first be on the ground in Vietnam and to know you were done with training and that you were entering into the real world of the war and what was going on. It seems like a surreal thing to experience.
Yeah, and I don't guess there was very many nights in Vietnam that I wasn't scared. I was scared the first night I was in Vietnam, and I stayed scared until the time I left Vietnam. I don't know how anyone could have not been afraid to a certain extent. The first night in Vietnam, I was put on the perimeter of the base there, the Cam Ranh Bay base, and put in a bunker on guard duty, and there was a firefight going on. I don't know just how far away, 3 or 4 miles maybe. I was hearing all of the gunfire, and there was a spooky gunship operating over that firefight, over that area. And the spooky gunship is if I'm not mistaken, a C-130 transport plane, and it's got miniguns mounted on the side doors of the plane, and the plane can pull into a real tight circle where it's flying almost on its edge, and those miniguns are firing straight down at the ground, and thousands of rounds per second coming out of those guns. And from a distance, it looks like a solid stream of red coming from that plane down to the ground. And you can saturate an area the size of a football field, literally saturate every square foot of a football field in just seconds with one of those rascals. And it's an awesome sight. But the first night there, I got to see what kind of terror we were capable of inflicting, and I was in what would have been considered a pretty secure area. Those big bases like Cam Ranh Bay, Da Nang, I mean, they're pretty impervious and in a pretty secure location, but that doesn't take away your fear of what could happen. And as I progressed over the next few days to smaller and smaller bases, the level of uncertainty and fear just kept growing. And by the time I'd been in the country for about a week or a week and a half, I was actually assigned to my company, my battalion and my company. So I went into the first of the 506, Company B, which was a line company, an infantry company. And I spent a couple of months in Company B. And our company commander was a blonde-headed, blue-eyed officer named Erickson. He went by the call sign Viking, and he was a really cool guy. I think 3 of us new guys stuck into Company B at that particular time. All of us that had been assigned to the 101st Airborne Division just went dozens of different ways to various units, and I think there were 3 of us new guys. FNGs is the term. Effing new guys. That's what we were all called, till we kind of got broken into the situation. We were FNGs. Well, he sat down. Captain Erickson came over and sat down with us 3 new guys, and he said, "Look, I know how you feel. You're scared. You don't know what you're getting into." He said, "But we're a good unit. We take care of one another. And as the days go on, you'll find out when we've been humping all day and we're tired and weary, and we get to a place where we're going to camp for the night, and you dig your hole and you get squared away and you fix you a meal and have a minute to kind of relax and kick back and catch your breath, and you'll get more and more comfortable, and you'll feel like you're fitting in." So he really gave us a good pep talk. Really helped our morale. Wasn't but a few days in with that company, and I'd gotten to know some of the guys and was making friends, figuring out what everybody was supposed to do. And I made a request. I said, "I'd like to carry the gun," and which was the M60 machine gun. It's a 7.62 millimeter NATO cartridge. Same thing as a 308 Winchester. Same cartridge exactly. And it is the 30 caliber weapon of the Vietnam era. Actually, that's what an M14 is. It's a 7.62. And the M60 machine gun is a belt-fed gun, weighs 23 pounds unloaded, and it's a big load to carry when you got a 70 pound pack on your back and you're carrying a 23-pound gun. You can get worn out pretty easy. But I liked the idea of the gun. I'd shot one a lot in advanced infantry training, and the gunners got relieved of a few little duties that all the other guys had to pull. The gunner kind of got a few favors. And I had an assistant gunner. He carried a lot of ammo for me in a spare barrel, and we were side by side all the time. Wherever the gunner went, that assistant gunner was right with him, feeding ammo. And there was a lot of other belt-fed ammo, or belt ammo, distributed among the platoon. Everybody fed the gun. And a few weeks into being with Company B, we were assigned to be on Firebase Berchtesgaden, which was on the edge of the Oshawa Valley. And that's, if you were to ever Google the Oshawa Valley, you would find out what a formidable place that was. It was a valley that ran down out of the Annamite Cordillera over toward the Laotian border, and was one of the main routes of NVA infiltration, and had a bad reputation. And Firebase Berchtesgaden sat kind of up on the hills above the valley. The name came from Hitler's Berchtesgaden in World War II. That was his stronghold. He had another stronghold called Eagle's Nest, which was higher up in the mountains. We had an eagle nest in Vietnam. A lot of the fire bases and a lot of the names there drew their names from World War II locations. Bastogne, other ones. But I and my gun were put in a bunker at the perimeter of Firebase Berchtesgaden, which housed a lot of artillery and mortars and infantry platoons. And August 22nd, 1969, the firebase got hit by a sapper attack. Sappers were North Vietnamese soldiers who pretty much came in unarmed. They carried satchels full of satchel charges, which were just explosive, without any shrapnel. They were concussion charges, and they'd come in hurling those concussion charges into bunkers and just try to saturate the base with sheer numbers of sappers hurling those charges, and the sheer concussion would blow your eardrums out and could kill you if it's close enough. But it was more of an attempt to discourage the ability to do them any damage. But these sappers were coming in, running across the LZs, crawling through the wire, hurling those satchel charges, and so that was a fight that went on all night long. And of course we had mortars and we had artillery, and they were firing what we call parachute flares. The whole area was lit up like it was daytime. These mortars would shoot these flares up in the air. They were illumination rounds that would just swing down under these little parachutes, and they just kept a constant barrage of those exploding over us, lighting up the area where we could see what we were shooting at. I ran my gun so long and hard. The M60 is a piston-driven action. It's got a gas cylinder underneath the barrel, and in that gas cylinder is a little piston, and a gas port bleeds gas out of the barrel from behind the bullet into that cylinder, and it drives the piston to the rear, which is what activates the action, cycles the action. I ran my gun so long and hard that it started cooking off. And that term refers to the fact that your barrel and chamber get so hot that the very second a round enters the chamber and the bolt closes, it explodes just from the sheer heat of the chamber. You don't have to have a finger on the trigger. My gun started cooking off and running by itself. I didn't have my finger on the trigger, but in order to stop things, you've just got to reach down and break the belt and let it run out of ammo. And so we all carried our rappelling gloves from when we were rappelling out of choppers, so we got our rappelling gloves on, switched the barrel, put my spare barrel on, and started over. And the next morning, when the fight was kind of calm, I took my cooking off barrel to the armorer and I said, "Don't let anyone have this. I need a new barrel, but destroy this one. It's not safe to even use." I could see the gas cylinder under the barrel was glowing red, and I could see the dark outline of the little piston in there. It never did quit functioning, but when it cooled, I was a little afraid it would be warped or something would be wrong, so I didn't think it was safe to use anymore. But that was just one night on Firebase Berchtesgaden. When we got pulled off of there, actually the monsoons were just beginning while we were still on Firebase Berchtesgaden. Our company commander decided he wanted to start sending our platoon out in 6-man teams. I was put on a 6-man team, and he said he'd like for me to carry a scope-sighted rifle, which was an M14, a scope-sighted M14. Back to the 7.62 round, it's the 308's what I was carrying. The semi-automatic rifle that I had trained with in basic training was a wood-stocked, scope-mounted rifle. We went out on a 1-week mission, and the monsoons had just come in, and it was raining and blowing wind day and night. Never quit. And I spent my whole week out on that particular mission just trying to keep my scope from getting too wet, trying to keep my rifle from getting too wet. That wood stock swelled up so tight on that barrel in action that I couldn't even break it apart to clean it. So that was kind of an unnerving experience. It didn't quit functioning, but I saw the effects of Southeast Asian monsoon on any kind of a wooden stocked weapon. But I enjoyed working on that 6-man team. I had made a good buddy by that time. His name was Anthony Quintana, and I called him Poncho. Everybody called him Poncho. And he and I got pretty close. And we decided after that we were going to transfer from Company B to Company E and get into recon. Company E had a recon platoon. Company E in any battalion is kind of the catch-all company. They've got a mortar platoon and a communications platoon and a recon platoon in Company E. Recon platoon always operated in 6-man teams, and because I'd been exposed to that, I decided I like this. So we transferred out of Company B into Company E. I think that was about the end of my second month in Vietnam, Poncho and I both. And when I got in Company E, I became a point man for the team, and Poncho was my slack man. He was right behind me every step for the rest of our tour there. And we worked in small units, 4 to 8 men, usually 6 men. Our job could be anything from rappelling into the jungle and blowing an LZ out with explosives so helicopters could get in. We're pulling ambushes, just doing regular recon work, studying troop movement. But the night we did our paperwork to transfer out of B into E, that's the night I got the letter that you heard me do. I was out with a 6-man team right before Christmas, 1969. Got a call on the radio. Our company commander said, we're going to send a helicopter out tomorrow, Christmas Eve. Going to take 2 of your men to the Bob Hope show. I think it was going to be in Camp Eagle, or big 101st Airborne main camp. He's putting on a show with all the girls he would take over there on tours. And pick 2 men. Well, we got out a deck of cards and we drew for high card, and 2 guys that were going to go went out on a helicopter the next day to the Christmas Eve Bob Hope show. So we decided we wouldn't ambush that night, since it's Christmas Eve, and the other 4 of us got together, got our heads together and started trying to come up with all the words to the night before Christmas. And we rearranged the words and plagiarized it into a poem called The Night Before Tet. And I remember some of the lines, some of the words, but most of them I've forgotten. But we got on the radio. I called back to our company headquarters and I said, gather up all the guys you can find. We're going to broadcast The Night Before Tet. And of course we had to talk real soft. not make much noise on that radio, but man, I could hear all the guys back at company headquarters in the rear laughing and howling at that poem. I wish I'd kept a copy of it, but it's gone. We had a lot of fun with that. So there were some real light-hearted moments over there.
Joel read several books while he was in Vietnam, and some of those had a deep impact on him. One was The Big Sky by Ab Guthrie. In an article written for the current issue of Range magazine, Joel said this about reading The Big Sky. As I read Guthrie on those bright moonlit nights when we weren't ambushing, this is what I would be thinking. This life I'm walking through right now here in Nam is probably the closest experience that modern man can have to the life of the fur trade mountain man that A.B. Guthrie portrays. Maybe I'm not trapping beaver, but I'm living by my wits and my weapon out here in mountains full of hostiles with no guarantee I'll be alive come sunup.
Company E, 1st of the 506, was the unit that was portrayed in the documentary, The Band of Brothers. I don't know if you've seen Band of Brothers. It was a series about that very unit during World War II. And there was a lot of esprit de corps in Company E, 1st of the 506. And we were all very proud of what we were doing and the unit that we were in. We kind of had a little arrogance, I guess you might say. Ordinarily, our missions were a week long. We'd be put on a chopper, taken to the jungle, dropped in, and they'd pick us up in about a week and bring us back. And like I said, our assignments might vary a little bit as to what we did during that week. When they picked us up out of the jungle and brought us back to Camp Evans, we'd get there afternoon. We would try to get re-outfitted. If we'd used munitions, if we'd used grenades, if we'd run short of anything, we replenished that. We restocked our rucksacks with rations, enough to go out for another week. Catch our breath, get on a bird the next morning, and go out on another mission. Because it was still in the monsoon season, even though we were supposed to get picked up in a week, sometimes that could extend to 3 weeks or even 6 weeks, because it'd be too socked in to get a helicopter in to pick us up. Sometimes we'd have to walk out to another fire base somewhere, link up with some other unit, some way to get extracted. I don't know how many times we'd call in for an extraction helicopter to pick us up, and we'd hear them coming, and we'd give them our exact location. We could hear them above us. They'd say, "We can't see the ground. Pop a smoke grenade." We'd pop a smoke grenade and say, "Smoke's popped, identify the color." Because a lot of times the NVA they were listening. They had their own radios and they'd found our frequencies, and if the helicopter pilot said pop smoke, well, they'd throw a smoke out. And so we'd say, "Identify the color." And if we'd popped a yellow one, they'd say, "I see yellow smoke," or "I see blue smoke," and we'd hope the Vietnamese hadn't popped the same color. That way they'd know it was us. And "I can't see you smoke." "Well, you're right over us. you're right over us. Just start down. And we would be on an LZ. We'd be on a cleared area that wouldn't interfere with their rotors. We can't see. Keep coming down. You're okay. Nothing interferes. Keep coming. They'd get to the point where we could see the skids of the helicopter, but they couldn't see us. And they would say, "We're out of here." They'd be gone. And all of that gave our position away. So we'd have to get things going and get the heck out of there and hope we didn't run into anybody and hope for another extraction in a day or two or in a week. And occasionally they'd have to drop us some rations. If we could tell they were over us, we could say drop them. I carried, when I went out on a mission, we used what are referred to as Lerp Rations, LRRP, Long Range Reconnaissance Patrol. They were dehydrated rations. In order to hydrate the ration, you'd heat a canteen cup of water and pour into the ration, which was in a plastic bag, and hydrate it. And it might be beef hash or pork and scalloped potatoes or beef and rice or chicken and rice. They were good meals. They were really good meals. Along with the main meal, there'd be some kind of a bar. It might be a chocolate bar, it might be a fruit bar, and there'd be some powdered cocoa and some powdered coffee, instant coffee. So my routine was I'd mix my cocoa and my coffee together in a canteen cup of water, and that was breakfast. Sometime in the afternoon or evening, I'd do that again and make my main meal. So I used one Lerp ration a day. That's what I packed, one meal a day to go out on a mission. And in the bottom of my rucksack, I had 2 or 3 plastic bags full of Vietnamese rice that I could probably survive on for a week, possibly even more than a week. And there were times when we'd do a little fishing in a stream. We could throw a grenade in a stream and blow some fish to the surface if we had to, We could survive. If we didn't get picked up, we weren't going to die out there. But things got pretty, we got pretty hungry, stayed hungry all the time. During the monsoons, we were miserably cold and wet. We were up in the Annamite Cordillera, which they're not that high. They're around 3,000 feet high, running from the South China Sea up. They're not that high in elevation, but it'd get down to 37, 38 degrees, and we were soaked and the wind was blowing, so you get pretty cold. Most people don't think of Vietnam as being cold, but we didn't have field jackets. Some of us would pack a jungle sweater, and I always did. I had a jungle sweater all the time and a poncho liner. That was it to keep warm with. And we had heat tablets that we would use to heat our canteen cups of water to make coffee and hydrate our ration. They came in a little plastic, waterproof, not plastic, but tinfoil kind of container. You open them up and light them, and you could boil a canteen cup of water in no time. With one of them, they put out a real light blue flame that was not visible very far away, and we carried a lot of heat tablets. When you get that cold and wet, about the only way to get warm is to light a heat tablet and squat down over it and wrap your poncho liner around you and try to trap that heat. And you could kind of dry out the crotch of your pants was about all you could do, but it was warm. and the steam would be coming out of those poncho liners. At night, we were working in really steep country. The terrain was, I'm going to say, a lot like the terrain around the observatory up here at Fort Davis. Pretty steep country and real rocky, triple canopy jungle. There were a number of nights that I slept curled around a tree so that I wouldn't slide down the mountain. Sometimes we'd cut down some ferns and try to pad the ground with those ferns so we could stay out of the mud. But sleeping was not easy, and cold, wet, and pretty miserable. We got sent out on a lot of ambush patrols, ambushing trails. That was pretty sleepless work because the whole team, all 6 men, had to be wide awake the whole night. Night ambushes were normally what we'd try to pull. Of course, we'd go bush up somewhere and sleep during the day. It wasn't like we never got to sleep, but I wrote a little piece here I called Oshaw, because of the Oshaw Valley, about a night ambush. Beside a trail in the Oshaw Valley, my team is lined up, motionless, totally quiet, completely awake, ready. The rain has stopped. The moon lights the trail we will ambush tonight. We each have a claymore mine positioned. We each have frags lying ready, and 21 magazines, 20 rounds each, and a clear field of fire. I'm leading this patrol, and tonight this trail is mine. My men won't fall asleep, and nothing could escape our kill zone. We're ready, psyched, capable. We planned this well. If we have visitors, first we'll blow the claymores, followed by grenades. We won't shoot unless someone is left moving. Then when silence returns, I'll check my men to make sure they're okay. Then we'll check the trail to make sure no one is alive. But for now, we just wait and wait and wait. A thought keeps running through my mind. I hope no one comes. That would be my wish, that no one comes. I know my men. I know 3 of them feel the same way. And I know the other 2 are hoping we get to kill somebody. That scares me, not because of this night or even this war. Nam has got nothing to do with it. They came to me that way.
When did you start writing poetry about your war experiences?
About 15 or 20 years after I got back. And I've known a lot of guys who write about their war experience. And they all said, it's the way it was with me. I didn't want to deal with it for 15 or 20 years, let alone write about it. And then you get to a point where it's on your mind and you just got to put it down. There's just a lot of men who'll go 20 years after the experience before they start recording it. I don't know if that's that way with the current soldiers who are in and out of the Middle East. I don't know if that's the way they feel, but I know a lot of non-vets who have had that same thing happen to them. It feels really good. It's catharsis, I guess. It feels good to put it down. Then you can kind of walk away from it, and it's not in there so much.
Were you writing any poetry while you were there?
Yeah, I wrote a little poetry. I wrote to this young lady who wrote me, and I wrote her some poetry. Of course, it's gone. I don't have it, you know. I wouldn't have thought to keep a copy of it, and I never even met her after I came back from Vietnam, and she may still have it, but I don't know. I thought about trying to make contact with her, but I just never have done it. I called her one time, I think, after I got back from Vietnam on the phone, and had a conversation with her, and that was it. I read a lot. I read a lot by moonlight in Vietnam. I don't know whether the moon was that much brighter there or whether my eyes were that much better then. I couldn't even begin to read a book with any kind of glasses by moonlight here. But I was reading Sand County Almanac and a couple of books by Eric Hoffer and Ab Guthrie's The Big Sky. I read those by moonlight in Vietnam, read a few other paperback novels, wrote and read by moonlight when we weren't ambushing or when I could.
Would you like to tell me the story about the letter and the correspondence with the young lady?
Sure. Yeah. This, I know it was probably 25 or more years after I was in Vietnam that I wrote this down. It's just something I'd kind of dismissed from my mind, and the memories of it kept flooding back, so I wrote this, and I don't think it could have been less than 20 or 25 years after Nam. The letter came out of the Pony Express bag late one night back at company headquarters, Camp Evans, Northern I Corps, addressed to me at Company B, first the 506, 101st Airborne Division. That was the night Poncho and Poncho was my slack man, began our paperwork for transfer to Company E. For the next 13 months, we would work in 6-man recon and ambush teams. The letter was scented with perfume, really nice perfume. The upper left-hand corner of the envelope had an address under the name Ann L. Hollingsworth. I held the letter, inhaling the perfume. Poncho chided me for withholding important information. Point man and slack man get to be really close. They don't withhold anything. I hadn't withheld. I didn't know anyone named Ann L. Hollingsworth. Pretty name, though. So I opened the envelope. The perfume grew stronger. The letter was neatly folded around a color photograph of a mysterious, beautiful 21-ish, round-eyed woman wearing lots of makeup and a black lace slip. By now, Poncho was out of control. The letter explained it. Ann L. was Nancy's college roommate. No, I didn't know Nancy either, but I knew of Nancy. She was Jim's stepsister. Jim was my best friend, my ex-college roommate, now at Yale Graduate School. I could have been there with him. By now, I'd had 2 ex-roommates killed and 2 more wounded here in Nam. So I finished the letter, still puzzled, still gazing at Annelle, still breathing her perfume, and wrapped them tightly in a Prick 25 battery bag to keep them dry and to keep the perfume from fading or escaping into the jungle, compromising our position. I opened the bag at every secure opportunity, and I wrote Annelle a lot over the next year. She wrote back, the only girl who did. In February 1970, I wrote her a poem for Valentine's Day, along with a leaf I'd picked, shaped like a heart. It pleased her. The picture and I made it home. Annelle became engaged to a Marine. She and I never met, but we'd been pen pals and friends during a crazy time when a friend was nice to have. I married. My wife could not handle the picture or the story behind it, so I unwrapped it one last time. After almost 3 years, the perfume still lingered. While the photo was burning, I relived the year we had written one another. A sometimes horrible year, a sometimes wonderful year, a year when a young man turned 24 and then 25 in a place he never wanted to be, and a sweet young woman, just a friend of a sister of a friend, took the time to write and to care and to make a difference. The charred fragments curled, broke apart, floated away like feathers in the breeze, and I erased the memory of Annelle Hollingsworth until now. I'll read one more. Don Lacey, Chris Lacey's the manager of the 06 Ranch. His wife, Dawn, lost her son, Jacob, in Afghanistan. Had a couple of rounds to the chest. I think it's been 9 years ago now. Chris and Dawn went to, I can't think where they bring the dead back to the East Coast. I can't think of the name of the base there. But they went there, and then Dawn was from Wisconsin. And they went to her hometown where the service was going to be held. And the whole town, absolutely the whole town turned out for the service. Sylvia went with Dawn and Chris just to kind of support her, because they worked. Dawn and Sylvia worked together in Iowa before they came down here, married us. So Sylvia went up there. I couldn't go. I had too much to do here. Then from Wisconsin, they came to Fort Riley, Kansas, where the 1st Infantry Division headquarters is. It's their base. And they had a big service, memorial service in Fort Riley, Kansas for Jacob. And they went to that. But while they were gone, I got a flagpole. And Sylvia and I had ordered a U.S. flag and a 1st Infantry Division flag before they left. And I had those and a flagpole ready. So I went over to their place at Fort Davis, and there's a ridge line above their house, and I commandeered Chris's skidster, and I dug a hole and set that flagpole in concrete, put the U.S. and the 1st Infantry flag on that pole, and arranged some rocks around it, a place where they could sit, smoothed a little path, lined it with rocks, walk away to that flagpole. I did that one day while they were gone. I wrote this little piece and wrote it on a piece of sack, and I sandwiched it between 2 pieces of clear plastic so it wouldn't be affected by the weather in case it rained, and I put that at the bottom of the flagpole, put rocks on it where it couldn't blow away. So that'd be the first thing they saw when they turned off the highway going to their house. I titled it Falling Star. Except for those who love them, even the brightest of stars receive but little notice among the millions in our heavens. But let one plummet, and for one poignant moment in time, all eyes are drawn its way.
Joel, thank you for being so open and willing to share about your experiences with me and taking the time, and thank you for your service to our country.
Well, thank you for saying that. And this has been a good experience for me. It really has. I'm thrilled to do it.
All right, folks, that's it for today's episode. I'd like to thank Joel Nelson for taking the time to visit with me. If you'd like to find out more about me and this show, you can go to andyhedges.com. If you'd like to contact me with a question or a comment or a story, I'd love to hear from you. Send an email to andy@andyhedges.com. Thank you for listening to Cowboy Crossroads.